Hi, everyone, and welcome to another session of our monthly Architecture Hunter webinars. For those who are joining us for the first time, this series began earlier this year, and it is always free and open to the public. Each month, we bring together different voices from architecture and design to share their ideas and inspire discussions. This initiative is part of Architecture Hunter's broader mission to not only showcase architecture, but also to educate and encourage exchange within the community. Today, we're very honored to welcome two incredible architects, Koichi Takada and Sanjay Puri, two extra special guests for us, as both received an honorable mention in the Architecture Hunter Awards 2024. Here's how the session will go. Each of them will have about 25 to 30 minutes for their presentation. After each presentation, we will open for questions from the audience. So please don't forget to send your questions in the chat. Our colleague, Daniela Silva, will be moderating the Q&A and bringing your questions to the speakers. So to begin, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Koichi Takada. Koichi is an architect based in Sydney, widely recognized for his projects that bring nature and architecture closer together. His work explores organic forms, fluidity, and a deep sense of connection to a place, creating spaces that feel both innovative and human. So Koichi, thank you so much for being here with us today, and please feel free to start your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much for introduction. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, amazing. So I just upload my presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, that's it?
Yeah, that should be it.
Yes,
Okay.
we
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Today, I'm presenting from Sydney, as you can see. I love this image. I call it nature and the city in balance or in love, whichever way you want to call it. But maybe it used to be, when I first arrived in Sydney just before 2000 Sydney Olympic. Since then, it became my motivation as an architect to, let's say, sustain this balancing act between the nature and the city for our future. So, I decided to establish my practice in 2008 in Sydney, and I have been practicing over 18 years and grown to practice around, let's say, around 50 architects. They're not only from Australia, but from all over the world. So, and we have amazing, exciting project, not just in Australia, but handful international project in Middle East, Europe, USA, and Asia, including where I'm originally from in Japan. So today I will talk about the wellness in the built environment. So let me ask this question. What is the wellness in the built environment? I suppose there are so many big ranges and types of project, right, that all talk about wellness. But today I particularly would like to focus on wellness living. Many ways to design spaces of wellness in order to promote our health and well-being across, let's say, 3 dimensions, let's say physical, social, and environmental. So I believe it is much to do with reconnecting ourselves with nature, especially being in a high impact urban built environment to stay healthy. And I will share my story with some of my works as examples. And let's say I hope to inspire the idea of so-called wellness living. So this is where I'm from. So the western part of Tokyo. During my childhood, I grew up in nature. So after school, I remember I was just so keen to get out of school and go out to nature, right? So I was obsessed with, let's say, climbing mountains, as you can see, to catch Japanese beetles, or went fishing koi in the nearby river. So in other words, my playground was very much nature. And what happened during my teenage years, at the peak of so-called bubble economy, Tokyo turned into one of the busiest cities in the world. The city is an exciting place, I understand, but often for many people, it's so overwhelming and stressful place to live in. And people can become so unhappy. So these are the problems of our society today, right? So imagine like if you put the lift, you take the lift, not the stairs. So it's about the speed, right? So in being more efficient and going fast and faster and faster. So let's say we be becoming like machines. So this kind of fast living is just not tolerated by human body and just not sustainable for long term. And this become even, let's say, more challenging for all of us not to get addicted. And I remember my fond story that my grandma used to tell me, right? So her childhood, can you imagine? She did not even have electricities. So when the sun came up, she started her day. And the sun went down, she went to sleep. So the body was completely in tune with nature. And today, what's happening? We all looking down. And our new digital world and machines want us to stay up, right? So it's hard to switch off. We need to catch up with emails, Instagram, all these social medias, and we are often so trapped into this infinite scrolling inside the digital world. So they want us basically constantly produce and consume. So we're just consuming, right? So despite connecting digitally, we are more and more disconnected physically. We lost this sense of belonging in the community socially in a human fashion. Often we live in an apartment in the city, but we don't even know our neighbors. The wellness in the built environment is not just about building, I suppose. So this planet Earth image is, can you imagine one thing perhaps we all have in common, right? As people say, don't bite the hand that feeds you. So we have our responsibility for the wellness of our planet so we can all enjoy its beautiful nature and a healthy life within it. Let me start with one of my projects. It's called Solar Trees Marketplace. So this is in Shanghai, China. This is an interesting one. So this is the satellite photo from 1984 to 2014. As you can see, this is the project site. So 1984 was completely forested, especially in the nature. Around here, 2000, the urban sprawl gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And let's say 10 years ago, our site was completely being in the city and nature disappears. So our idea, this concept for this master plan is to bring the nature back into the city. So this is our site in green, and I suppose this is one of the remaining green patch within this whole areas. The idea of this, right? So left, as you can see, is the kind of the typical apartment blocks in these areas. So you have this kind of in between building. There's the car parks. The sun hits. It gets really hot. Kind of the urban heat, the island effect. And that's a typical ones. But what we propose is to really bring the car park completely underground. So the car network, parking, everything, the road is in underground, and then allowing deep soil for trees to grow. What it means in a proportion is, so building is about kind of, let's say 10-story building, and by way of submerging all the parking network, we are completely pedestrianizing the ground surface and having the deep soil, growing the trees up to, let's say, at least the half of the building height. So the people that living, here would be looking always the leafy outlook. People that living above the tree canopy would have access to the sky view, but also beyond. So what it means in 3D, so this is kind of, it's currently under construction, but the future we see this tree will grow into a forest, if you like. So you could live in between forest or in between garden, if you like, right in the middle of Shanghai. And this was our vision. And at the gateway of this master plan site, so this was the forested, what was once on this site, we proposed this marketplace, and we nicknamed Solar Trees. And it kind of quite a symbolic gesture to have this structure at the gateway of this big master plan. So we constructed this 352 kind of artificial tree canopies in between this big form to create the marketplace. And the structure itself also, just like the natural tree, it kind of grows and grow and grow, and then becomes kind of the forest-like environment. And then the purpose of this is, as you can see on the right, we have this traditional marketplace, dry and wet marketplace under the forest. That's how they used to trade. And then with the urban sprawl completely forgotten. So what we try to do is bring this traditional kind of the element back into the city, but under the kind of artificial man-made forest environment. So inside is very much a biophilic design, as people call it, currently used as a display suite. We hope in the future, we want to completely take off this glazing so people can just come in and flow in and out and create this traditional marketplace that once it was before. And then in the future, we're hoping that this kind of existing tree would grow as tall as the tree structure, so that the man-made and the natural environment would completely merge into each other. Okay, so next one. So by 2050, they say that about, let's say, 70% of the global population would be living in urbanized areas. Right? So as you can see in the lighting dots. So one of the projects that we recently completed called Upper House, this is in Brisbane, in Australia. So the Australia, as you know, has the different states. So this is the Queensland states. And then we have Brisbane as a city. So within the Brisbane, right by the Brisbane River, which is wonderful the way they organically traces the landscape. But anyway, so further zooming in, so that's our site in South Brisbane, looking towards the CBD of Brisbane. Very much inspired by the native species, so Moreton Bay fig trees, and then this subtropical weather, what nature does is so wonderful. So I was so inspired by this particular tree and turn into kind of nature-inspired vertical living in South Brisbane. So idea of this vertical living is also interesting because typically it's just an apartment building, and normally you would have some kind of wellness facility, let's say, like the residential amenity such as gym, party room, so on and so forth, normally clients would propose at the least expensive areas. But our clients, they have this great ambition and vision about sharing the best place in the building for everyone that lives in this building. So I call it the best spot of the building for residential amenities. And in the context, this is very much an art precinct. So it's within the context of the art galleries and the cultural facilities. And let's call it, this is the cultural hub of Brisbane City. And you see the upper house kind of growing tall, just like fig trees. And we invited indigenous artists. And I believe the building for future should include the story of the past. So we included this native indigenous kind of Aboriginal artists to tell the story of the past. So the podium has this artwork by Judy Watson, but the future, on the top level is very much about the future living. So remember that by 2050, 70% of population should be living in the city, and most of the time would be vertically, and the problem living vertically is then you're going away from ground level where you have a lot of social interaction. As you come up, you are so detached from the ground level, you don't even talk to people. So what we did is to create this meeting place. It's almost like having a two-story forum. And what we call this place is the place for wellness. And then the top level is place you socially interact. So if you like, the bottom is place you detox. And then the top level is place you retox. When you're at the wellness facility looking back, as you can see, these wonderful tree canopies, inspired by the Moreton Bay fig trees, and then it's kind of create this shaded element and the framing the view organically back towards the built environment, and the contrast is it's really wonderful to watch. So the wellness club at the level 32, you have these amazing facilities such as yoga, gym, the infinity pool, the barbecue area, the massage place, the sauna, sunken lounge, magnesium baths and ice baths, and the sound of water is created all the way around. So it's place you kind of, the place you recharge yourself. Then when you come upstairs, this is the place you kind of, have fun with your family and the friends. So it's essentially a party room. So you have, from number 1 to number 9, you have this kind of a dining areas connecting to this kind of commercial grade kitchen space. So you could kind of bring the chef and the cater your friends and family to have this dining and the wine room, lounge, what we call bird's nest, where you kind of bring everyone together in a cozy space in the middle of the air, and the bar, cinema room. And then this is a kind of very popular space which we created to work from home, to be able to work from home. And then it's really wonderful ways to kind of galvanize all these elements, and especially post-pandemic, post-COVID, this is a place where people start to connect not only with other people, but within the self well-being. And then kind of this kind of residential amenity does promote the sense of healthy or healthier way to live in the city. And then the canopy itself made of actual natural materials in timbers, you can see. And what timber does is amazing. Nature does is amazing. It could twist and turn and so on and so forth. We try to do it with metal and other materials. We kind of debated, but the timber was only material that can bend and then twist and then somehow created the tree canopy, just like the fig tree's roots. And then as you can see, this was created as a kind of like putting together puzzles. And then we also compacted in some way that it's easier to transport. And then on site, you kind of put it together, this three-dimensional puzzle, and then it creates this wonderful natural materials and natural, materiality that in the middle of the air, on the top of the building, and it's wonderful to see this reconnection with nature in this way. So this is the bird's nest that I talked about. This is a sort of the element that really does humanize the high-rise building, and people love coming here, take photos, or come have this very cozy moment with the family and the loved ones, and talk about a lot of things. And it's wonderful to see this type of space. I use, especially weekend, it's really busy, and it's really nice to see working as we intended. And so this bird's nest also has the sense of craftsmanship. So it's bent by the steam, and it's really intricate, and it's really beautiful to watch. And this is again sort of the things that forgotten in today's kind of the fast construction. You don't see this slow construction, and this is again the place where you really slow down and then reconnect with not just with nature, with people and in an urban environment. So that the ground level, we invited emerging artists, local kind of emerging young artists, and then we promote their kind of the future, and then often struggling artists that display this art, and of course create this interaction with the residents. May purchase the art, or we open up an event mode. The public can come in and become part of that art precinct and become an extension of this experience within the neighborhood. So next project. So the Norfolk is in the Gold Coast in Australia. So as you can see, just south of Brisbane. So the people that live let's say, found this kind of place to be is because in a city living, you don't have nature. So you go towards nature, let's say, during the weekend. So this becomes kind of this coastal environment where people have this weekend house, or kind of some people would live post-pandemic. You can live anywhere to work. So they choose to come closer to nature. So this is one of the projects that realized based upon those foundation of thoughts. So the Norfolk is very much inspired by this pine cone. So this pine cone is pine is the heritage tree along this coast. And then I picked up this pine cone and then kind of research, and what it does is kind of open up in a open and close in a wonderful ways. To see it in the best weather, they kind of open, and of course the harsh weather, they'll close, and they find the best moment to open and start seeding. So we draw inspiration from pine cone and created this kind of undulating form of structure. So you see this, shaded area, and then also the sunnier side kind of staggering. So everybody get shaded side or the sunnier side, and so on and so forth. The structure itself, normally it's look heavy, but we try to make it lighter and lighter psychologically. The built form is intimidating, but making way of chamfering, it creates this lighter appearance, as you can see. And then looking up is very much sculptural. So this was in situ, concrete, as you can see, tapered, and created this curvature and so on and so forth. As a result, you can see almost look like very light touch, despite being a concrete structure, and an organic form really creates this connection with a coastal form. And just like the pine cone, this screen open and close, Like this, you could see it's a double layer, so you could kind of open and close depending on the weather and as you like, and then connect with outdoor when you open completely. The interior also has this kind of curvature that connect with the external environment. So the inside out is completely blurred as you like, but being here feels like being outdoor in nature. And I almost call it being inside is the invisible design. So you don't almost see the design, but you really become one with the nature outdoor like this. It's a wonderful place to be. And when you're inside, you really smell the see the sound, the air. It's just a wonderful way to live. And of course, on the rooftop, as you can see, there is the Gold Coast, the main town center beyond, built by the beach. But this side is the kind of the bookend of end of the long beach, and you could kind of enjoy the full day sun and so on and so forth. So being here, you really immerse with nature and look after your well-being. And I call it the wellness living at its peak. So this is the last project I want to show, and one of the key principles I talked about is environmental aspect. Sunflower house proposed in Marche in Italy. And this is really interesting. We were commissioned by the Bloomberg Green media to come up with this prototype housing. And recently I was in Europe and I look at this kind of condition of the planet heating up, as you can see. I was in Italy, in Greece, and especially Greece in Athens was 47 degrees. And then what's happening, as you can see, as an example of Europe, is that around 1980 and then just before 2000, this blue was much cooler than average temperature. And then from 2000 onwards, everything gets hotter and hotter, so much warmer than average. And you can see the warmest, the hottest is coming, from the Spain and then coming inland, and it's just getting hotter and hotter. So how do we mitigate this kind of condition and still sustain our well-being despite the kind of the challenge in the climate crisis? So you look at this kind of the site. I was really inspired by this rolling landscape, of this Marche in Italy, and especially this sunflower field where I was taken. In the morning, I look at the sunflower. They were all watching myself. In the afternoon, when I went back, sunflower followed the sun and turned away from me. And I was so fascinated what nature does. So I was so inspired by this phenomena and then created this concept. So this sunflower house, what it does is that this kind of the flower, the petal, as you may call it, actually turns following the sun. So what it does is that it accumulates solar power energy, so electricity, much more efficient than the conventional means, just around 40% more efficient than the conventional means. And also during the summer, when it gets hot, the living room underneath could turn away from the sun, and the winter does the opposite. You could follow the sun. So this mechanism can be designed in this house. And also you could naturally ventilate as much as you can in summer. And then also stack effect to push the hot air up. But winter you shut and then contain the heat, so on and so forth. So it creates this house that what we call house with no bills. So when you live in this house, you don't have to pay any bills. And the idea of this is to really encourage the carbon positive dwelling within a European setting, and this can be duplicated in many ways. And I call it 19th century was form follow function. Perhaps 20th century, you might say form follow nature. And it can be multiplied in many ways across the field, just like nature does, and optimize and integrate into this wonderful natural environment, and touches the ground lightly, and it's really considerate towards the kind of the existing environment. So I want to finish with this. We shape our buildings after they shape us. Winston Churchill once said, and it just really gives us a hope, and being an architects, dealing with many, I suppose, the crises that we hear today, that our responsibility and our drive has to be towards considering the wellness factor in how we live, how we work, and how we look after the planet. Thank you so much.
Hi, Koichi. Thank
Hi.
you so much for your wonderful presentation. And because you not only shared your work, but you also shared your personal experience. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So moving on to Q&A. Okay, and since this is a very interesting and I would say hot topic, this relationship between human and nature and well-being. So your work often emphasizes a natural approach to design. And I wanted to ask you, how do you see the relationship between nature, architecture, and human wellness in today's urban environment? Because in the beginning of your presentation, you talked exactly about that, right? About how we are speeding up everything.
Yeah. No, the world is going so fast, Daniel. I mean, everybody knows this, and we all experience with these wonderful things that invented by all these smart people. But is that really smart? Is that really doing justice to who we are as a human, right? The health is really such an important part of our asset, being human being, and often neglected part of it. And I think architecture has a lot to do with healing of this crisis moment, and I want to believe in that, because otherwise, what else do we have? We contribute to such a mess of this world. And don't get me wrong, I love cities, and I myself live in the cities, but I don't know, I crave nature, and often interesting that I realize I go on a holiday, and I don't know you guys, but I go to nature, that the market in Italy, I go there every year. I love it, right? Because you saw, right? There's no building. It stops stressing me, like in the city, imagine everyone's an architect, I assume, listening. It stresses you. You see this detail. Why is this detail, that detail? Oh, this is great. Oh, this is one. Oh my God. It's constant, right? Then you have the phone, Instagram. Oh my God, this architect's so impressive. Oh wow, look at this, look at that. It's never ending. So you kind of.
It's a lot of input.
Yeah, we kind of lost ourselves. So what we're trying to do is that let's go back to basic, right? And then let's kind of learn from the past. And of course, a lot of answers in the past, and childhood especially influence, I suppose, who you are today, right? Subconsciously or consciously. In my case, was nature. And that's where I went back to, and that's where I'm going, So I don't know whether I answer your question, but that's the kind of the prime drive, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. One of the things I noticed in your presentation is that you don't only use the materials, but you kind of work with the materials, especially with the wood. You don't simply use the wood as a material. You work with the shapes and the properties of that material. So as you were saying on the top of the building, that a lot of people were using that space and feel driven to use that space. I was wondering how, from your perception and your experience in your projects, how do people emotionally respond to these environments?
Yeah, no, the spot on. Emotions is a really important part, right? And the case of Upper House is, I was very impressed. I mean, look, we designed it, we won competition, and it took, I think, 6-7 years to build it, to realize it. And as an architect, of course, we're proud. But really, the impact, let me say, the positive impact that I felt was after the completion. I mean, forget we won the award and all this, like, okay. But when you're in that building, wow, incredible. People just talk to each other. I never seen building vertically stacked, 32-story. You go in, people greet each other like I don't even know people. You go into the lift, everybody's talking. Then you go on this amenity, right? Imagine normally people put penthouse there, right? The developer clients,
Yeah.
so-called clients who want to make the most money out of the top building. These clients, amazing, Tim Forrester from ARIA, he said, Koichi, we're putting this on top at the best spot, right? And then we said, well, let's do it, right? And when you go there today, it's unbelievable. Like, I've seen maybe every city has this kind of concept, Middle East, America, even Japan. I don't see many people interact, like superficially maybe, but I never seen people go there just like you go to cafe to meet people, or like you go to your favorite restaurant, or people really want to be there, because the environment is so wonderful. It's almost like having, I don't know, like you go on a resort in an island, right? You feel completely relaxed and transformed. But imagine doing that being in a city, vertically on top, right? So everybody wants to be there. Everyone wants to bring friends. Everybody wants to bring everyone else there, and
That's
I
the
never
power of
seen
architecture
anything
as
like
well.
it. Yeah, and then this tree and all this, right? Actual, obviously, we planted 3,000 species of plants, sorry, 3,000 plants, pot plants and species, many species. And when you're there, you feel like you've been in nature. And of course, the natural materials you mentioned does enhance your experience, because people go, oh my God, look at this, it's actually a wood. And then you know what? Not just people, the birds start to kind of come and nest. We have to get rid of this magpie. They're actually dangerous. So the clients had to take their nest because it was so prolific in terms of how human, not just human, the biophilic, if you like, even animals wants to be there. And it's just incredible.
So it created some kind of ecosystem by itself. It sounds
Exactly.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and continued on this topic, how do you measure or how do you evaluate wellness in your projects beyond aesthetics? I mean, are there any specific metrics or frameworks you look at?
I mean, look, it's an interesting one, right? I mean, this is super ambitious, so you might laugh about it, but story about blue zones? The blue zone is like in Japan, we have Okinawa, and Italy has Sardinia, and Greece has Ikara, and so on and so forth, right? The spots that people live like up to 100 years or more than 100 years. It's just this kind of blue zone that, I don't know, people are so healthy, right? And then there's a 3-factor, right? Move naturally, essentially exercise, and then eat healthy and socially interact, right? And all of these element attributes to wellness, or wellness, well-being, wellness of these blue zones, right? My ambition, and I don't know how you test it, and what what is my drive or what is my hope as an architect is that if somebody live in a built design and built environment 100 years more than and still continue to live there, I mean, that would be my ultimate goal, right? But in the city. I mean, this is too ambitious maybe, but that's the drive though. And this is the drive for the planet as well. You know, I mean, climate crisis, I mean, forget it. It's disastrous. I mean, you look around today's weather, Australia is raining like almost 30 days. My mom said Japan is like 40 degrees for last, God knows what, 2 months. She's suffering, and Europe was like 50 degrees, like Middle East. What on earth is happening, right? And I don't know what we can do as an architect, but the drive is that the same, right? For planet, I know it's ambitious, but can we just keep trying? I mean, sunflower houses, again, maybe somebody might say, oh, this is ridiculous, like as if you could create houses like that. But, you know, we're trying. Some clients said, can we do it? Can we do the concept? You know, a lot of people give up, but we still kind of searching. Maybe in Brazil, somebody might come, but let's see.
Yeah, because even if you don't totally achieve that, maybe you are paving the way for other people to achieve it. So it's a path that you continue pursuing. So I think you are saying, okay, it's very ambitious, but maybe step by step. I'm not saying that next week, but it's important that we find a path and we explore that.
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
it's very generous to look on that direction.
But our role as an architect is to inspire people, right?
Exactly.
And if I can inspire, I might not be able to do it, but if I inspire next one that comes, listen to us, great. Let's do it, right? Let's create the greener or the greenest, you know, built environment ever. Why not? I mean, that is the ambition, the purpose that everybody wants to be inspired.
Absolutely. So for our last question, and you were now talking about the Sunflower House project. What specific technologies make the house carbon positive, and are these readily available on the market today?
Yeah. You probably laugh. There's no fancy technology. It's very simple. So the rotation mechanism is like the turntable. You know the car park turntable?
Yeah.
You know, like in a tight car park, you go in, you turn your car, you come out. That is the mechanism.
Okay.
So
adapted to a larger scale.
Yeah. Or revolving restaurant, I'm sure you've seen somewhere in the world. Same technologies. Well, technology meaning it's done before, right? So it's nothing special, but we're selling the dream, right? But also, really, it's not really a dream. It's really respect the way people live from the past. The past, like I mentioned about my grandma and, you know, my wife's grandma also say the same thing from Italy and Japan, and like, doesn't matter. They work with nature, right? So we need to perhaps go backwards. Technology is one way, but we should also learn how to live with nature. And you know, like our office, we don't have air conditioning. It's embarrassing, kind of, right? Summer is hot, winter is cold. But we kind of, I don't know, we learn to live with it, you know. I don't know whether I answer your question, but Sunflower House is really about really creating the vision for the future. And it's not just about moving forward or creating this unbelievable technology that somehow save the world tomorrow. No, it is about the respecting the past, understanding how we could live with nature, just like our grandma did.
That makes total sense. Koichi, thank you so much for this meaningful conversation and for sharing your experience and your work. It really reminds us that architecture can create deeper connections, not just between people and spaces, but between people and nature. And ultimately, as you were saying, people and themselves. So thank you so much for sharing your work today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Koichi, for sharing your work with us today, and Dani for mediating the audience's questions. And Koichi, we really appreciate your time and generosity in being here. And now we will continue with the second and final session of today's webinar with Sanjay Puri. Sanjay is an award-winning Indian architect, founder of Sanjay Puri Architects in Mumbai. His work has been widely recognized around the world for its bold contemporary language, innovative use of form and material, and a strong commitment to sustainability and context-driven design. Sanjay, we're very happy to have you with us today, and you can start your presentation. Sanjay is opening his camera.
Okay, we're all set. Can you hear clearly?
Yes, we can.
So thank you very much to you and the entire team at Architecture Hunter. So the topic wellness in the built environment can actually be perceived in a number of ways. And to illustrate this, we showcased here 4 projects, each one of a different scale, something as small as 9,000 square feet, going up to a project of 150,000 square feet. And then each project is a different typology. If you allow me to share the screen, then I can start.
You can share your screen.
Okay, clear?
Yes, we can see the screen.
So let me start with a very small house project, which is 9,000 square feet. This house was built 3 years ago in a place called Bhilwara, which is a very small city in Rajasthan in India. So when we look at the location, Bhilwara has temperatures in excess of 40 degrees Celsius for 8 months of the year. And for this very short period from November to January, it becomes cold, and it becomes quite cold in the sense that it can drop to 5 to 10 degrees only in the mornings and nights. So our site for this house is located within a very large neighborhood which has over 200 houses already existing there. And we are at the crossroads at a junction. So when we first looked at this site, we thought of how one can build it with the local people from the region and make bricks on the site itself so that the building from the start itself is sustainable. So that's what we actually did. The contract laborers all came from within a 20-kilometer radius. The bricks were all made by using paddy straws, which are available in the fields close by, and cow dung. So these are called Vedic bricks. There's no firing involved in this. And they have very good thermal as well as sound insulation. And then another thing that this region is very famous for is lime plaster. So lime is readily available, and in fact, a lot of lime mining is done in this location. And lime replaces cement. It reduces the temperature by 7 degrees. And this is what we've used for all the walls, interior as well as exterior. So coming back to the house and the way it is situated within the plot, we had very limited amount of space. The plot was 622 square meters, and considering the client's requirements, which were 5 bedrooms with a study room, living space, family space, dining separate, large kitchen, stores, etc., we had to go 3 levels up. So we look back at references from the traditional Indian architecture in the region. So Rajasthan is known for its palaces and old Haveli kind of houses, which are really huge houses. So each of these generally have arcade spaces running the perimeter of the house. And what these arcades do is they create cool spaces to walk in circulation, and at the same time reduce the heat gain into the building as well as allow indirect sunlight into all the rooms. But we've used it in a very different way. So we created this entire envelope around the building that creates interstitial spaces for every single room to walk out. And these interstitial spaces then serve to reduce the heat gain into the building exactly the way the arcades were in the traditional architecture. And at the same time, allow natural light to permeate the inner spaces, but at the same time, do not allow direct sunlight. So this is really important when the temperatures are so high for 8 months of the year. So the house is very sculptural by virtue of this complete envelope that we've created, which cuts across the horizontal and the vertical planes simultaneously. So just quickly going back to the plans, although it's a very simple plan, there are three different heights within the house. So the living room is 1.5 floors high, the dining space is 2 floors high, and the rest of the rooms are single level high. So as you walk by in section, you experience different volumes in each part of the house. So that's a cross section through the house showing the different volumes. So the building extends out all the way till the road. There was very little marginal open space, so we convinced the client not to have a compound wall and allow the garden inside to merge with the garden outside. So these are the inner volumes. So in every place, you see that there is indirect sunlight filtering in. At the same time, there is no bright sunlight coming in anywhere. So very brief video showing the surroundings, showing the house, showing it at the road junction, showing the tightness of the plot, and showing the house opening up in various directions. So it was a small 9,000 square feet house built on a 622 square meter plot with a large amount of requirements from the client. And the best compliment we got was for this house after the family moved in, after 3 months of working there, of living there. And they said that we have three generations living in the house, but each one has their own open space, own sheltered spaces. When we want to collect in one place, we can. When we want to have our own individual spaces, we have those as well. So it's a delight for them. And that was one of the best compliments we ever got. Now, from there, we moved to a much larger housing project, which is essentially low rise, which is located also in Rajasthan and India. So this site is totally 100 acres and it was built for a cement factory to house their workers and the people working in the cement plant. So it's a total 100-acre site with a contour difference of 16 meters from the top to the bottom, which is not very high considering that the length is considerable. So within this site, we have a public zone and a purely residential zone. The public zone only houses the spaces where outsiders can also come and use, including a school, a temple, and studio apartments, a guest house, and common facilities. So for this, we looked at the organic settlements in Rajasthan in the old cities. And there was nothing that was planned on grids. There was nothing that was planned in a certain kind of geometry. It all just grew. And when one takes those kind of paths, it becomes very interesting because you don't know what you're going to see next when you're walking down a road. Because every road takes a little bend. Every road opens up into a slightly wider space between three houses. And that's what's translated overall in this entire project. As I mentioned before, we had a contour difference. So we've taken care that within the 100-acre site, not a single shovel of mud went out or came in. Everything was built on the existing contours. So this is the way the houses are all scattered along the existing contours, and that's the eventual site plan. So right on the top, there are studio apartments. Then towards the center, there's a guest house, and then there's a bachelor's accommodation. And the central large portion on the right-hand side houses the common amenities for all these people. So at every floor, the plan is different. So when one is entering, one doesn't realize that you're entering at the ground level, but as you go further, the land drops, so there's a level below you in certain parts, and then there are two levels above. And in each case, the orientation is such that everybody looks out straight into the garden spaces beyond with sheltered spaces of their own. So it's a very interesting plan where every portion of the site is totally perceived differently. So this is just looking at one small unit of that site, how every level steps back, creates these open, semi-sheltered terrace spaces which are usable, because here again, the temperatures are in excess of 40 degrees Celsius throughout 8 months of the year. So these are various studies and various parts that we did, each one based on the contours of that portion. And the entire site with its contours is kept natural. The landscape is very, very simple. So when one is walking through the site or when one is using any of these spaces, what you see outside is constantly changing in terms of composition, in terms of light, in terms of the shelter that it provides. That's the approach road with the common amenity spaces, which actually forms the hub. And then beyond which each one of these arms houses the different types of housing that we were required to do based on the client's requirements. And all of these corridors are open, naturally ventilated spaces which weave through the entire site. Rajasthan, the people are very colorful. So whether it's their shoes or their clothing or their turbans or the bangles that they use, there's a lot of vibrant color. And these colors are incorporated in the corridor spaces. And at every point, the color changes when one turns the corner. So you have these different compositions at all times, and at each time you get different composition of the outside when you're walking through. So here one can see the level differences in the existing contours between the buildings. So all areas are naturally lit. All areas are naturally ventilated. We've used fly ash bricks throughout for construction. A lot of sheltered spaces, so there is no need of air conditioning, and recessed windows everywhere so that you get indirect sunlight inside. And the interesting thing here is that because there was a cement factory, I know cement itself is not a sustainable thing, but that's our client. So the entire residual energy from the cement factory is used to facilitate the energy requirements of the entire 100-acre township. So there is no supply coming from anywhere else. And within the site, at a natural sunken area, we created a water reservoir which harnesses rainwater and then provides water for the entire year through the entire complex. This is a very short movie which will give you an idea of how the entire complex is. When we started this site 7 years ago, it was completely barren land. And this is how it is now. This movie, in fact, was made just a few months ago, 5 years after people have moved in. So this was Rouse houses, and now there is a hotel. So that's the third typology. So this is a hotel that we designed in a location called Nasik, which is in the western part of India. So beautiful site which overlooks a large dam. So it's a complete water view on the northern side, and on the southern side there are hills. So here, as opposed to most hotels, 50% of the area is naturally ventilated and no air conditioning. And over 50% of the walls are built in natural local black basalt stone. Here again, there is a difference of 18 meters in the side from the bottom till the top. From the northern side is down and the southern side is on the top. So we created a garden space at the bottom, which overlooks the water and a large banquet hall that opens into it, after which the building steps back. So one can enter the banqueting at the ground level itself, or you can go straight to the lobby, which is one level up by a ramp on the right-hand side. So the lobby again opens into a large open garden space, beyond which are the rooms, which again step back with a terrace, and then every room opens into an 8 feet wide balcony from where you can sit out and look at the views of the water in the front or the hills at the back. So these are some of those views, and that's the way the rooms are configured. Both the wings are created with open, naturally ventilated courtyards. So here again, we took this derivation of the way the rooms are laid out in an organic way, the way organic cities have been planned, not following a particular geometry. So these are the circulation spaces, which are all naturally lit. And each one of these courtyards has solar panels on the top. So 55% of the energy consumption of the hotel is generated by solar panels on the rooftop. That's a cross section showing how the levels step back, and another section through the different heights of spaces. That's the typical room. And this is the way all the ventilation is done. So you have 8 feet wide balconies, which are sheltered. So no room gets direct sunlight. They all get indirect light. At the same time, every room has a beautiful view, and all corridors have natural ventilation with the hot air rising from the courtyards and being thrown out on the top. So these are views of the building as one looks from the approach. All of this is local black basalt stone. That's the garden at the lowest level. And this is looking out from the banquet into that garden. And this is the lobby, which is at one level higher than the banquet. And that's the entrance to the hotel. And this is the upper level where the lobby and restaurant open out onto a large terrace overlooking the water, beyond which are the rooms at the upper level. So this is that large terrace overlooking the water on the northern side. So these are some views of the internal spaces. The second courtyard again is totally different. So each courtyard is also treated differently so that every time you go back to the hotel, you get a different experience. So these are terracotta tiles, which allow terracotta perforated tiles, which allow natural ventilation in the courtyard throughout. And this is the pool level, which is at the third level, which is again stepping back, beyond which are the rooms. So each of the rooms is in these linear blocks, which angle differently at every level, offering very nice views to each room. That's the lake that you can see beyond. And this is from the very first level of the rooms. So as one goes higher, you get still better views. And this is the last project. It is again a very small project, but one of the most satisfying projects that we have done in our office. So it's called the Nokha Village Community Center. It is actually located in a village in Rajasthan in India. And this is the site. So as you can see, it is complete desert surrounding it everywhere. And the client owned a house here, and the father of the family had passed away, and they wanted to create a memorial where his last rites were done. So they earmarked this plot for us and told us that they wanted to build something in his memory. And they actually came to us with this sketch and said that, this is something that we would like to build. So we asked them, I said, why would you want to build something that is like a small temple or like a small church? Because nobody is actually going to come to pray. So rather than this, you build something for the community. And when we searched and looked around at the village, these are actual images of that village. So this is the way it is largely desert with a few scattered houses. And there are 144 villages in the overall region. So people here don't have any kind of community space for gathering. When there is a marriage or when there is a function or when there is going to be a dance festival, they put a tent up and then they take it down the next day. And then the schools. This is a school which is very close to this site. I mean, this is the condition of the schools. So they have no proper library space or studying space. So we looked at the site again and told the clients that rather than building just a small temple kind of space, let's build something for the community where all these villagers and the students can gather. And luckily for us, the client agreed as long as we only had one condition that it had to be built within 10,000 square feet. So this is what the perception was. These were the existing facilities, and this is what we came up with in the first sketch. And we looked at this based on the traditional Indian courtyard space, which has actually originated from this region. So we looked at creating a circular courtyard around the place where the last rites were done, and then realized that that courtyard would be a very limiting factor if there was a larger gathering of people, which we envisaged would have been the case since there wasn't any kind of community center in this area. So we decided to cut it and open it up towards the northern side. And then extend the arms out further so that there is protection from the sunlight, and basically the entire open space is open towards the north. You get indirect light and it should be usable through most times of the day. And then as a further reiteration, we decided to slope the entire terrace. So that makes the roof accessible as a garden space. Because literally here, for miles, there is no garden, there is no grass for people to actually feel on their feet. I mean, we look at gardens everywhere and we take it for granted. But when you go to this place where there's only sand everywhere, people have actually not even seen a proper green garden. Of course, it's a challenge to build a garden here. So what we did is we studied the existing rainfall in the region, which is very, very low. And because it is low, and we decided that we make a rainwater harvesting tank, which takes in all that water for those few days when it rains in this region. And that water should be sufficient to supply water throughout the year for this project. So based on that, we built a 900,000 liter water tank. The excavation from that was used to create an earth berm to the building on the south, east, and western sides, thereby completely protecting it from the heat. And the heat here is extreme. It rises to almost 50 degrees in May. So that's the overall design as we developed it. This is the ground floor plan, which has got a small museum space in memory of the father at number 4, which is directly under the earthworm, and then a library space for the children of all the schools in the neighboring areas where they can come and study. And then the rooftop, which becomes a garden for all the villagers and children to use, which has a double loop. So one climbs up through a shallow slope and then comes down from the other side. And then there are scoops within the garden to allow natural light into the museum space below. So this is a longitudinal section showing how there's an open auditorium created within the center of the space, and then a cross section showing the different volumes as the garden rises on the top. So this is an overview. So one can see that stuff literally for miles around, there is just desert and there is no green. And this is a view from the south looking out towards the north. So all of this has been built in the local sandstone that is available in the region. These are the scoops that allow natural light into the museum. And those are children playing in the center. And the library, which is the only space that would have been exposed, has natural stone screens, which were cut The stone was sourced from within 2 kilometers of the site, and these were installed to protect the library space from direct light. This is the museum space within, and that's the library space within. It's a very small building, only 9,000 square feet. And this is how the villagers are now using this open auditorium space for multiple things, from music to dance to various performances. And children use it throughout the rest of the day. So from all aspects, this building is very, very sustainable. The embodied carbon footprint is almost nothing. So it is completely self-sufficient in terms of water supply, although it's situated in the middle of a desert. It's built in local stone. It's built by people from the region. We've used the villagers themselves who were trained to make this building. And this was built during COVID time, so we had 5 hour long video calls explaining people how to take the curvatures and how to do it correctly. This is the work going on. And these are earthen pots which are available there, which were used for waterproofing and reducing the heat gain from the terrace. So this project, although only 9,000 square feet, generates usable space of 27,000 square feet. So it just shows how a small footprint can actually generate a much larger usable space. And this is visited by over 500 people every day. So over 150,000 people have already visited it, which is not a very large number in India, but considering that this is a small village in literally in the middle of nowhere, it's a very large number. So the best part of this project is that the success has actually led to a lot of other community projects being done by the same clients and by other people who are in this region. So the very first of these is a village, Noka Village Girls School, which will be the first girls' school in the entire 144 villages, which we've already started building here. And for this, we had numerous discussions with the students of the existing schools. And then there is a small park that we are creating within one of the villages nearby. And then finally, even this project has just started. It's a 200-year-old Shiva temple, which is being redone, restored, and a lot of community spaces added to it. So this is also underway. And this is a small movie which will bring us to the end of this presentation on this project. So these projects of different typologies illustrate how spaces can be built in extreme climates that remain comfortable through days when temperatures are in excess of 40 degrees Celsius. You know, that library I visited last 3 months back in the midst of summer with 42 degrees outside. And although we provided air conditioning, there was no air conditioning on, and children were studying there, and it was absolutely comfortable. They also celebrate nature, showcasing it or creating it where it was non-existent. And most importantly, each one is built sustainably with a very low embodied carbon footprint, as well as low carbon emissions and energy efficient throughout the life cycle. We feel that when a space is naturally lit, as well as naturally cooled and rooted amidst nature, it evokes a sense of well-being and wellness. So this is the way I perceive wellness in the built environment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hi, Sanjay. Thank you so much for your presentation. This last video was amazing to see how people really use the space and live your projects. So to start the Q&A, and considering that your work responds deeply to India's climate and context, I wanted to ask you, how does designing with climate shapes wellness in your projects?
So designing with wellness is, it's actually integrated from the very inception of the design. So whenever we get a site, we look at it as to where is the sun direction, how can we reduce heat, how can we make spaces that are comfortable at all times of the day and in every day of the year. It's one of the primary reasons. And I also believe that light is very, very important. And no space in India, especially when we have 300 to 330 days of sunlight in most parts of the country, there is no need for artificial lighting for any kind of space throughout the day.
Mhm. Um, Throughout the different projects you shared, they all feature striking forms and different uh, shapes, geometries, and so on. I was wondering, how do you see the relationship between form making and human experience? Because, for example, in your first project you shared, you talked about the common spaces and the patios, the courtyards that you created in the building.
Yes. So, so a lot of people look at something that has a certain shape, which is different, and thinks that it was the shape that actually governed the design. But that's not the case. So in
Mhm.
each case, you know that these are the functions that you have to take care of, and how can you take care of them in a good way, but at the same time also allow them to be perceived as something that is different from what has been done before. So you look at each project as to how one can do that, make that difference, and create that individual identity for that particular place. So yes, every house has a lot of sheltered spaces, but nobody has it as something that is continuous and wraparound. So that is what we experimented with in that house, and it worked very well for the people who are living there.
Mhm. And continuing on that topic, how do you balance the relationship between ecological wellness and user wellness in your projects?
So the ecological wellness is by using sustainable materials, designing in a sustainable way, and making your buildings energy efficient. And the wellness of the people, I think, comes by the way you use those spaces, by the way you create the spaces, and by the way you perceive them to use, and they get used. Like for example, I mean, a lot of times we've come across this feedback Recently, we did a house in a place called Jaipur, which is also in Rajasthan, where the client actually, after living in the house for a few months, has told me that we don't want to go for holidays anymore because the kind of peace that we feel in our house is not there in a resort or in a hotel. So, that's the ultimate compliment. So that's when you realize that, okay, like what we did has proved to be successful for those people living there. Because they also said that, when you were doing the design, we did not understand it. We try and understand, but then finally everybody only understands the look. Okay, so we could just see that, okay, it's going to look like this, it's going to look like this. But now we understand after living here that it's not about the looks, it's about how each one of those spaces feels.
Mm-hmm. And how people can feel the space and connect the space and use the space. I can
Yes.
imagine that for an architect,
So,
having that feedback from a client must be beyond.
yeah, it's amazing. In this community center, people said, you've gone and put grass in a desert. Like, why would you do that? And what about water? What about this? What about that? What about the heat? So we done a huge amount of study. The grass that is used firstly is a grass that uses less water in the first place.
Mhm.
Okay, we studied the amount of rainfall. We studied that if we make this capacity of water tank, it will suffice for the entire year. So we built that first in place. And none of that was wasted because all of the soil that came out of that went into create earthworms. So now that grass is green and you have to see those children running on that grass. In that video, when we were doing it, they were actually running up in the middle of the afternoon. It was 38 degrees that day. And those children could not believe that they're feeling grass on their feet. I mean, that's the kind of joy that they got.
That's amazing. Okay, so we are running out of time. And to wrap up, I would like to make one last question that is for young architects starting now. How can we practically incorporate wellness-driven design in smaller projects with limited budgets?
I think you can incorporate wellness in any project, irrespective of the size and irrespective of the budget, because finally it is about how you create those spaces that are meaningful. You create those spaces that are naturally comfortable and you don't need energy to make them comfortable. That can happen at any scale and in any budget.
That makes sense. Okay, unfortunately, we have to wrap up the Q&A. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Sanjay,
Thank you,
for
Daniela.
your presentation and sharing your projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the entire Architecture Hunter team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, for this great presentation, also for sharing your ideas with us, and we truly appreciate your time. I'll also like to take this moment to thank once again both of our speakers, also Koichi Takada and Sanjay, for joining us and for making today's session so special. And of course, thank you to everyone in the audience for being here with us, for your engagement and for the great questions you've shared. This webinar is part of Architecture Hunter's mission to create spaces for learning, dialogue, and inspiration in architecture and design. We look forward to seeing you again in our next session, so stay tuned for the upcoming webinars that we have on our website.